Okay, continuing on the previous video, which started the coding of selection change procedure in the Loans DB behind Loans DB worksheet. I'm hoping this is the last recording in the entire series. I'm going to switch back to the code and correct a couple of mistakes that I realized after I finished the recording. Specifically, I had max cost here. I need max costs, and I need to add that one, which is going to get me to that row 21 I was describing in the previous video. I think I corrected this mistake over here. I'm going to save and then continue. So at this point, right, we have a single customer selected in this list, in this case between rows 2 and 11, and we've cleared a previous display of loan information for the previously selected customers, which was this last step number 5. So now the first thing we do, we we set the selected customer in the top left corner of the customer list. Specifically, we use cost selected, which is a string variable declared right about here, and make that into a target dot value. Right, we now know that is a single customer. It's not two, it's not a blank cell, it's not someplace else, so it's as clean as we can make it. Then the setting of the top cell is the standard this workbook dot active sheet dot range A1, right? So that's the top of the customer list. Okay, so then what we're going to do is loop through the customer in the list, and then we're going to check, and find the match between the selected customer and the cost selected variable, and in the list that we are sort of looping through. And once we do that, we're going to store the adjacent customer ID into a integer variable called cost select ID. So that's the next step, or next two steps as labeled here. Okay, so you're going to use the index variable I, going from first to last row minus 1. Okay, from first to last row minus 1. So that's the offset of 2 to last row shifted to the left, 1 to last row minus 1. I got to place the next I here right before step 9. Okay, and then in step 8, I'm going to check, properly indented, whether whether the customer that was selected, right, through that process, through the target target range variable, is the same as the top cell dot offset I comma 0. So going down column A essentially, value, and in that case we have a match. Okay, once we get that match, we can then go ahead and look up cost selected ID. Is that the right name? Yep. As top cell dot offset I comma 1, right? So that's in column B, the cell right next to the one where we're currently at. Okay, so that's going to give us that 4-digit integer that's used to uniquely identify a customer. All right, so all it doesn't totally matter, if we found a match, we don't have to keep looking, so we can exit the 4. All right, I'm going to save that and have you take a look at it before we go to the next step, which is creating a little bit more elaborate SQL string. Right, in step 9 here, that's going to start by selecting the city, which is going to repeat if there's more than one loan for a single customer because they live in the same place. Then the type of loan, which for multiple loans is likely to be different, although not necessarily. Then different amounts, interest rates, and terms. Okay, and we're going to have to do that by joining the customers and loans table, but only, of course, for the selected customer, which is now identified uniquely through this cost select ID. So scrolling down and making sure that we use the right SQL variable, SQL cost loans. Okay, we're going to start building the string as follows. Okay, equal two double quotes. Okay, select. Now, if you don't remember the names of these columns, you have to open the database or have it somehow handy. So city, type, amount, interest rate. Make sure to spell it right, otherwise the code is not going to run, and term. Okay, so again, the city will repeat for the multiple loans for the same customer. The type might or might not, the amounts will not, and the interest rate probably won't, as well as the term. So this is the loan information I kept referring to in the previous video, right? That we are after for this specific customer. Now, the next step is to take the the beginning of the string and add to it the source of all these columns, right? So now, because the city column comes from the customer table and the rest of the information comes from the loans table, we have to join them as follows: from customers, inner join loans. Make sure you have these spaces at the end of these strings. Okay, then concatenate again, and now we have to perform the actual join on customers. Make sure everything is spelled right, because this is where it typically gets stripped up. And .cust ID is loans.cust ID. So this is the primary key in the customers table, as you may remember from the database programming part of the class, matches the foreign key in the loans table. I need a space here at the end as well. And finally, the last line should be the where clause, where we restrict customers dot cust ID to the one that's selected. Okay, and that one comes from that cust selected ID variable. Let's make sure that I spelled it right. Okay. So, if everything is correct with the SQL string, which is, as I said, a little bit more elaborate, needed 4 lines with this font size that I have: city, type, amount, interest rate, term. Make sure you have these spaces at the end. From customers, inner join loans on customers.custid equals loans.custid, where customers.custid is whatever that 4-digit number is. Looks okay. If it's not, the code will let us know for sure. So the first thing we want to do, we want to set the cell E1 to the customer name that we already know. It's stored in a cust selected variable, right? So that means we're going to just insert the name right here. Okay, then we're going to insert the city and then the detailed loan information. So that's the order of business here, I suppose. So let's figure out how to use this construct. Let's go someplace where we have this workbook.activesheet.range, because I don't want to type this again, and the cell E1 and its value, which again, as you know, can be skipped, is you can use either target.value, or you can use selected cust. Is it cust? No, it is cust selected rather than selected cust. Okay, then what we want to do is open up the record set by running essentially this query, against loans database. Okay, as we've done a few times, as we will do, I suppose, in the class, right? And then we're going to move to the first record, because all the records have the same city information because it's the same customer. Just need to move to the first one and then grab that city and then display it in cell H1 right here. Okay, and then we'll reset the counter and the top cells so we can continue processing their loan information. So this all comes down to opening the record set first with SQL cust loans. Okay, using the what's hopefully the active connection. We're going to have to check this workbook.con loans, and if it's not active, we're going to have to reactivate it, as I discussed a little bit before in previous videos. Okay, then what we do is we move to the first record, in order to grab the city information, and then I'm going to use that same this workbook, dot range dot value to change E1 to H1 and grab using the fields collection or the columns of the record set the city field. Make sure to spell it right. Okay, this is unlikely to work at the first try. And as you remember from before, the connection is going to be dropped and you're going to have to reset it and so forth. But we are heading in the right direction. The row counter. So this is going to count number of loans for this specific customer. It's set at 0, and we're going to reset the top cell to now start at D3 rather than A1. So I'm going to find that line here and change A1 to D3 because I no longer need the top cell to be A1 until I run this whole thing again for a different customer. Okay, so let me just extend this down a little bit so you can see it better. So here we're going to loop while there are records, or loans specifically for the selected customer. So we have the same construct, do while not dot end of file. Okay, and then we loop, and then once we're done looping, we close the record set. So that's why that's already in there. The first thing we do is increment the counter. Row count is row count plus 1, and then the second thing we should always do is make sure we move to the next record to avoid the infinite loop. Then in these cells here in this section right there, we're going to be inserting the type, right? The type of loan, amount, interest rate, and term. So you have to make sure that these columns are all spelled right. And the construct to do that is going to be top cell dot offset, right? So top cell is now D3, okay? Offset is row count, okay? So first row, 0 offset means column D, so cell D4 for row counter 1, and the value of that cell needs to be dot fields, okay? And this is the type of mortgage. Okay, so essentially, right, this is going to go down one row from D3 to D4 and insert the type of mortgage for this customer, type of a loan for this customer, like mortgage. Okay, we know there's at least one row because the customers would not be in this database if they didn't have any loans at all. There could be more than one, so we'll see for different customers how this works out. So the rest is just sort of copy, paste, modify to get amount of the loan, okay, and what is it, DE column, I guess, right? In the column F, we're going to have the interest rate, so that's offset of 2. Let me just copy paste the interest rate in an effort to not misspell anything, but now I have to recopy this and paste it there, and then the offset of 3, which is G. Column G is the term. We don't have the payment stored. We have to calculate it. That's the last piece at the bottom. Okay. We could, however, save this, all right, and make sure that connection is active, which I'm not sure that it is. Let me come back to my lectures folder. Well, yeah, looks like it might be, and see what kind of errors we get now. I also squeezed a little bit of this cell B so you don't really see those customers IDs, although you might want to display them just for show. You just make sure you don't delete them or modify them in any way. So if I click here, nothing is happening. Selection is changing, but it doesn't look like the event is firing. So maybe I'm going to continue by saving this. All right. Yeah, I'm going to restart this project and see if it works. I might have some incorrect paths or something. Okay. Right, this is not the right project, of course. I'm talking about the payment calculator here. Yep, not sure why it wasn't working before. One thing that happens though, I had the range here pre-formatted, but this does screw up the formatting. Okay, so every time I click on a different customer, okay, I get that customer's name, sort of echoed back in cell E1, his or her city in age 1, and his or her loan information without the payments. We don't have those yet. So the mortgage type, amount, rate, and term in this table or section of the worksheet, right? When I click on a different customer like Max here, I get his info, and notice that the info for the previous customer Ellen was removed. So the payments are missing, the formatting is screwed up, so that's the last sort of step. But before we do that, notice that if I'm clicking around anywhere else in the worksheet, the selected change event is triggered, but nothing happens because I'm not in the right range. The same should happen if I go down to the bottom below row 21. But if I get in a section of column A that allows for customers, like in 16, I should get a message: you selected the blank cell, please try again. And also, if I somehow manage to select 3 customers, it should tell me that I must select only 1. Okay, so that worked. Save the changes and I'll go back to the code and scroll down to the bottom. So the last section of the code, right, is sort of discussing the fact that we can insert formulas into Excel through code and then also copy paste those. Okay, the first thing I want to do is find the bottom row here, right? The bottom row will be like 5 here for Helen in her section, right? So I'm going to use the same construct as before using the L row. So let me find one of them, like this guy here, and copy that down to the bottom. Okay, and we'll start with D3, so it's the same thing. Okay, so then in cell H4, I have to insert the first PMT formula, and it works like this, right? I find this, I copy paste this workbook dot active sheet dot range H4. Okay, and instead of value dot value, I go dot formula, and then formula is specified sort of as a string inside double quotes, but it has to be a correct formula, and if every formula starts with equal PMT, okay, open close parentheses, to not forget them, then F4 divided by 12 is the interest rate because column F has the rate, comma G4 times 12 is the number of months because column G has number of years, and then I guess negative E4 is the amount because column E has the amounts. So that should calculate the correct payment for the first cell. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to copy that cell. So I'm going to highlight the cell, copy it, okay, then go and select the entire column H, which in this case is just the cells H4 and H5, okay, and goes like this: H4 through H and L row, and paste special. Again, don't get the drop downs, but it works. XL paste all. Okay, and then we're just going to select cell A1 just to deselect the range, the column H range. So this should work, and the only remaining thing would be to get the formatting. So let me see. Debug. Oh, I forgot dot select. Okay, so one more time. Let's try to click on a different customer. Oh, every time you have an error, you lose the connection, which is sort of annoying, but yep, it's definitely the case. And we've encountered this before. We have to sort of manually rerun this. Let's see if I can get that going now. Yeah, still has that copy squirrely thing going around. And then finally, I need to just format all these cells properly, and then I'm actually finally done. So what I need to do is format column E as currency and column F as percentage, because those are the two that are consistently getting screwed up. This one's fine. So the way that works is, again, I'm going to come up with this kind of construct, right? It grabs essentially the column. Instead of H, I need E, and then I need dot number format to be in double quotes. And this is Googled. I don't have any real insight as to how to get this format other than Googling it. And then I'm going to grab this whole thing, copy paste it, change the column to F, which are the interest rates, and then again Googling, get the percentage format that looks like this. Get rid of the dollar sign, put a period here, and then we need 3 decimals for this example, and then percent. Okay, save that. Let's see if I changed selection now. I finally get it the way I want. Okay, save. Switch back to the presentation and hit the summary slide. So this concludes a lot of videos, I think 9 altogether, on Excel VBA programming, right? We introduced some of the basic elements of the Excel's object model, as the top of the slide shows, right? The hierarchy of it, specifically from application to workbooks, worksheets, ranges, including charts as well. Discuss some of the major properties, methods, and events. We demonstrated the use of standard programming constructs with these Excel objects, right? And developed completely this payment calculator project with VBA. And then on a more elaborate side, I suppose, we used both CSVs and databases to show how these Excel applications would really work in practice, right? And demonstrated the use of some of these typical events like worksheet change or worksheet selection change, and how that would be coded to accomplish some of the tasks that we set out to do in these projects. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll have our lecture 4 in-class example to go through all these concepts again on a different set of examples, and then you will do it for the final assignment for this class. Okay, so this is the time to end.